Hi friends, welcome back to another edition of Storytime 10, and today it's The Incredibles. Are you all comfy? Then let's get right into it. It had been an exciting day for the Parr family, who are now on their way home. Unknown to them, something villainous was stirring under the surface of Municiberg. Suddenly, from out of nowhere, the supervillain known as the Underminer burst through the ground in a giant machine called the Tunneler. The family quickly changed into their supersuits and chased after him. Violet, however, had to stay behind to look after baby Jack. "Oh great," she said. The young super, who would have liked to have joined the action herself. Meanwhile, the Underminer was causing havoc, burrowing beneath the city, breaking open bank vaults and taking all the money. "Consider yourself undermined," cried the supervillain. Mr. Incredible quickly appeared and punched his way into the Tunneler. He grabbed the startled Underminer and threw him against the control panel, smashing it to pieces. The machine heaved forward and sped up. With Mr. Incredible off balance, the Underminer jumped into his escape pod and got away. Mr. Incredible inspected the ruined controls and saw the Tunneler was headed up to the surface. There's no way to stop it. The Tunneler smashed through the ground and hit the monorail, knocking a train off the tracks. In a flash, Frozone appeared and created an ice bridge to get the passengers to safety. The Tunneler, however, kept going. "It's headed for City Hall," cried Mr. Incredible, who had been joined inside the Tunneler by the rest of his family. With Elastigirl's help, Mr. Incredible pulled the boiler loose from the engine, causing a massive explosion. Luckily, Violet wrapped them all in the force field to protect them. The plan worked, as the Tunneler stopped inches from the City Hall. Wow, that was a close shave. As the Incredibles left the broken machine, they were quickly surrounded by the police. The supers were blamed for wrecking the city, and not for capturing the Underminer. "You would have preferred we do nothing?" asked Mr. Incredible. "Without a doubt," a government official replied. Unhappy at their treatment, the Parr family went back to the motel they'd been living in since their house was destroyed. Agent Dicker, who'd followed them back from City Hall, revealed that the National Super Agency was being shut down. In 2 weeks, the family would be on their own. Oh wow. At dinner, the family were talking about their future. "We want to fight bad guys," said Dash enthusiastically. "Superheroes are illegal," replied Helen. "Whether it's fair or not, that's the law." After they'd eaten and the children had gone to bed, Bob and Helen spoke about finding a new house and getting jobs. Just then, Lucius, also known as Frozone, appeared. He had news about a business tycoon who wanted to make supers legal. "He wants to meet tonight," said Lucius. Whoa. Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl and Frozone arrived at a massive building belonging to DevTech. The owner, Winston DeVore, loved supers and wanted to make them legal again because his parents died as a result of a robbery. "If superheroes had not been forced underground, it never would have happened," he said. "I'm sure of it." Winston's plan involved getting the public to see the supers in action. Evelyn, his tech genius sister, showed them all a small camera for their supersuits that would record their heroic acts. Winston then announced that the first mission would go to Elastigirl. Having arrived back at the motel, Bob was trying to persuade Helen to accept the job. "A few hours ago you were saying it was over and being a superhero was a fantasy," he cried. "Now you get the officer of a lifetime and you don't know." "You know it's crazy, right?" replied Helen. "To help my family, I've got to leave it. To fix a law, I've got to break it." Bob reassured her by saying he would take care of the kids while she was away. Relieved to have her husband's support, Helen called Winston to accept the job. The next day, Winston sent a limo to pick up the family and take them to their new home. Wow, what a home. When they arrived, they saw it had an indoor pool as well as multiple hidden exits. "Isn't this a bit much?" asked Helen. "The important thing is, we're out of the motel," replied Bob. That's a good point. Leaving her family to settle into the new home, Helen found her new supersuit and jet-powered, all-electrical elasticycle. She was soon ready to leave, not before saying goodbye to Bob. "You'll be great," said her husband. "I will be great," smiled Elastigirl, "and you will too." Elastigirl zoomed away to the airport, where Winston and Evelyn were waiting for her. Winston explained her first mission will be in the city of New Urban. "You want to make a big crime-fighting statement. You go where the crime is big," he added. The next morning at breakfast, Bob told Dash and Violet that their mum had left for a new job. "She's an advocate for superheroes," he explained. This didn't make sense to Violet as she knew superheroes were illegal. So Mum is going out illegally to explain why she shouldn't be illegal. Bob wasn't sure how to best answer. But luckily for him, the school bus arrived. Violet and Dash rushed out the door, saved by the school bus. Meanwhile, in New Urban, Elastigirl was desperately trying to stop a runaway hover train. Riding her elasticycle, she sped through tunnels, across roofs, and even over a crane. And there's the train. After finally catching up with the speeding train, Elastigirl stretched herself into a parachute to slow it down. Wow. The hover train screeched to a halt just seconds from disaster. As Elastigirl checked to make sure the passengers were all okay, she noticed a message appear on her control panel. "Welcome back, Elastigirl, the screenslaver." Back home, Bob was helping Dash with his maths homework. But the sums had confused him. "It's okay, Dad," said Dash. "I'll wait for Mum to get back." Bob then went to read Jack Jack, a bedtime story. But before Bob had barely begun, the baby had dozed off. Feeling exhausted and missing Helen, Bob fell asleep on the sofa. And not long after Jack Jack snuck out of his cot and went inside, he spotted a raccoon shooting through the bins. With its black masked face, it looked just like a burglar. And Jack Jack was determined to catch it. What was more remarkable was that Jack Jack had walked straight through the glass. Wow. Moments later, a loud crash from outside woke Bob up. He jumped up and rushed outside to find Jack Jack firing laser beams from his eyes towards the startled raccoon. "You have powers!" shouted Bob happily. "Yeah, baby." His excitement was short-lived as he realised that if Jack Jack was developing superpowers, he had a huge problem on his hands. No sooner had Bob taken Jack Jack back inside, Helen rang to make sure everything was under control. "Amazing as it may seem, it has been quite uneventful," lied Bob. "How about you?" "I saved a runaway train," cried Helen, unable to contain her excitement. "It was so great." After recounting the story, she said to Bob, "I couldn't have done this if you hadn't have taken us over so well." With Helen believing Bob was doing such a good job, he was determined to succeed. So he stayed up all night figuring out how to help Dash with his homework. The next day, Bob sat down with his son once more. By the time Dash left for school, he had finished all of his homework. Bob was proud of his son and proud of himself too. Back in New Urban, Elastigirl was being interviewed about her daring train rescue. Suddenly, a hypnotic pattern appeared on every screen in the studio. The interviewer, Chad Brentley, spoke in a robotic voice. "We are controlled by screens, and screens are controlled by me, the screenslaver." Elastigirl was about to slap Chad out of his hypnotized state when the screenslaver threatened to crash an ambassador's helicopter. Elastigirl rushed out from the studio roof. Upon reaching the roof, Elastigirl saw the ambassador's helicopter and leapt inside. The pilot was hypnotized by the screens until Elastigirl smashed them. She then grabbed the ambassador, swung out of the spinning craft and landed safely. Yet again, she'd saved everyone. Yet another stunning superhero success. Winston believed it was time to push to make supers legal. "We're going to have a summit at the SCA," he cried. "We'll gather leaders and supers from all over the world." Elastigirl was happy things were going so well, but knew the screenslaver was still out there. She had a plan to deal with this. Taking Evelyn to one side, Elastigirl said she could capture the villain by tracking his broadcast signal. All she needed was a device that could do it. "I can get your contraption together," replied Evelyn. That night, with Evelyn's tracker in hand, Elastigirl set her trap with the screenslaver. She called in for a remote interview with Chad Brentley from the roof of his studio. But as before, the screenslaver took control of the broadcast. The tracker lit up and showed the signal's origin. Elastigirl set off and arrived at the apartment that was the source of the signal. "Find anything interesting?" It was the screenslaver. The pair began to fight, but the screenslaver slipped away. Elastigirl chased after him, and seconds later the apartment blew up. All the evidence had been destroyed. In the confusion, Elastigirl was able to capture and finally unmask the villain. Behind the mask was a very baffled young man. He insisted he was innocent, even as the police arrested him. Back home, Bob learned something that shocked him. His former supercar, the Incredible, was in the hands of the car collector. "They told me it was destroyed," he cried, before rummaging in a box and finding the car's remote control. Dash snatched it from him. "Which button launches the rockets?" he asked, excitedly. Suddenly, Violet screamed. Jack had transformed into a monster and was chasing her down the stairs. She and Dash quickly realised Bob had been hiding the baby's new powers from them. They both told Bob he needed some help. Not knowing who else to turn to, Bob spoke to his friend Lucius, who suggested Edna might know what to do. So Bob took Jack to see Edna Mode, where he asked her if he could babysit. Edna was appalled. "I'm not a baby person, Robert," she cried. However, upon seeing Jack morph to look just like her, Edna's heart melted and she changed her mind. "Aunt Edna will take care of everything," she cooed to Jack. Meanwhile, Winston and Evelyn were throwing a massive party to celebrate the capture of the screenslaver, but Elastigirl and Evelyn were busy watching footage of the villain's lair from their suit cameras, and something felt wrong. "Look," said Elastigirl, "one of the screenslaver's monitors was tuned into my suit cam. Isn't the suit cam closed circuit?" "Maybe he hacked it," shrugged Evelyn. Something didn't feel right to Elastigirl. All the screenslaver needs to hypnotise someone is a screen. She picked up screenslaver's goggles and examined them. Small screens had been built into the lenses. Without warning, Evelyn forced the goggles on Elastigirl. Bright lights flashed and Elastigirl was suddenly hypnotised. Oh no. In the morning, after a night's interrupted sleep, Bob returned to Edna's house to find that she had enjoyed babysitting Jack. She'd even created a supersuit that could anticipate his powers and send alerts. Edna put Jack in the testing chamber and handed Bob a tracker. The tablet lit up. Replication event. A moment later, little Jack multiplied into lots of Jacks. Wow. Elastigirl awoke in a freezing room. She couldn't stretch to escape. If she tried, she'd break. Evelyn was glaring at her through the glass wall. "So you're the screenslaver," said Elastigirl, who asked why Evelyn had betrayed Winston and superheroes. "Superheroes keep us weak," she replied, and then went on to explain how she'd used a pizza delivery guy to play the screenslaver. "Are you going to kill me?" asked Elastigirl. Evelyn smiled. Nah, using you is better. You're going to help make supers illegal forever. She then placed Elastigirl back under hypnosis. Bob had brought Jack home and was showing Violet and Dash how to use Edna's tracker. As the kids were playing with the device, the phone rang. It was Evelyn. Elastigirl's in trouble, she said. Meet me on the ship. The ship at DevTech, replied Bob. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He called Lucius to watch the kids before rushing away. Soon after, 6 hypnotised supers, all under Evelyn's control, arrived to kidnap the kids. Frozone arrived just in time and created a giant wall of ice to block their path. It wasn't long before they'd broken through, but luckily it was enough time for the Incredible to burst through the living room. Dash had summoned in with the remote control. The kids were able to escape, but Frozone was captured and a pair of hypno goggles were slapped over his eyes. Having no idea what had happened back at the house, Mr. Incredible met Evelyn at the DevTech yacht, eager to find his wife. As Evelyn led into the ballroom, Elastigirl suddenly appeared and pounced on her husband. He tried to dodge her attacks, but she was too fast. Helen, he cried, confused, it's me! Elastigirl ignored him and slid a pair of hypno goggles over the Mr. Incredible's eyes. He fell silent and still. The kids knew their parents were in trouble, so they used the Incredible to get the DevTech yacht as quickly as possible. By the time they arrived, the ship had already left, but the Incredible wasn't just any old car. Follow that boat, said Dash to the vehicle. The car suddenly sped off the pier, landed with a splash in the woods and sailed towards the ship. On board, Winston was welcomed all the delegates. Soon it was time for the ceremony to begin. I thank all of you for representing your nation's commitments to superheroes, he said. Moments later, the kids boarded the boat and began the search for their parents, but Jack wandered off and Dash had to chase after him. Suddenly, Violet was attacked by a hypnotised super called Void. Void opened a series of holes in space to trap the young super, but Violet fought back, blocking each of the Voids with a force field. Dash quickly returned to help, and the pair of them worked together and defeated Void. With the super beaten, the pair rushed off to find baby Jack. In the conference room, the International Superhero Accord had just been signed. The world is super again, declared Winston, but as the crowd gathered for a photo, Evelyn put a hypnotic pattern on the screens, entrancing everyone. The world watched as Elastigirl, Mr. Incredible and Frozone, all still under Evelyn's control, delivered a dire message. We no longer serve you, said Frozone, we serve only us. With everyone starting to panic, Evelyn ordered the supers to speed up the yacht and destroy the controls. The ship was on course to crash into the city. Suddenly the kids ran and saw their parents standing over the smashed controls. Jack floated over to his mum and removed her goggles. No longer hypnotised, Elastigirl snatched the masks off Mr. Incredible and Frozone. They too were soon back to normal. Elastigirl quickly changed into a red supersuit. The Incredibles were reunited and would fight together. Evelyn watched on from her control room. Angry her plan might be foiled, she ordered the remaining hypnotised supers to attack the Incredibles. By working as a family, the Incredibles were able to remove the hypno goggles from other supers one by one until all of them were no longer under Evelyn's control. Now the supers were all free and the ship was about to crash. Evelyn escaped the boat in a jet that was hidden on the ship. With Void's help, Elastigirl was able to enter the cockpit and confront Evelyn. The reputations of the supers were ruined, taunted Evelyn. You will never become legal. She then kicked Elastigirl, knocking her over. On the yacht, the supers were trying to stop the ship from crashing into the city. An idea suddenly came to Mr. Incredible, who jumped into the water and used all of his strength to move the rudder. The ship began to turn. In the jet, Elastigirl was struggling to breathe as the plane went higher and higher. So thinking quickly, she grabbed a flare gun and fired it at Evelyn's oxygen tank. The tank ruptured and threw the villain through the cockpit's windscreen. Elastigirl quickly launched herself out of the plane and caught Evelyn in mid-air. Just as the pair were about to hit the water, Void caught them both in a portal, sending them tumbling safely onto the deck of the ship. With all supers now working together, the ship turned even further, and with the help of a giant snowbank created by Frozone, it came to a grinding halt just in the front of the city. Everyone was safe and the police came along and arrested the real screenslaver. The public now saw that the supers were a good thing and they quickly became heroes to everyone once more. A judge also thanked them for their extraordinary service and restored their legal status. The Incredibles were now ready to take on anything that came their way, and they would do together as a family. The end. Wow, that was an action-packed story, and I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more Storytime 10 and more action-packed thrillers. Have a nice day.